we're about to talk about what I think of as the Trinity. Most people know the Trinity as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they see it as three aspects of God. So I've been working on this theory for the last 13 years, and at the end of it, I sort of went from the bottom up, and I'm trying to explain it from the top down. So at the top, it ultimately has three worldviews that are not reducible. And one is the self-explaining set of everything, and that's the Father. The Son is the self-including source of everything, and the Holy Spirit is a self-activating Tao of everything. And by Tao I mean method. Okay? And so this is the closure of nature without closure of stories of nature. So the three stories equally describe nature well. So they can't be reduced. And so there's actually 13 sets, or not 13 sets, 13 qualitative quantities that compose, there's only one set. And it has 13 qualitative quantities, and it goes from 0, and then it goes to 1. So 0 is non-existence, and 1 is existence, 2 is positive and negative, 3 is three perpendicular orientations, or 3 dimensions, and then it gets kind of complicated after that. There goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But we'll get back to that. Perhaps not in this podcast, but... So, the self-explaining set of everything contains its own source and meaning. Meaning all the qualitative quantities. What I mean by qualitative quantity is actually defined within everything. And the explanation for the set is also contained within everything. And that source is actually undecidability. And what I mean by that is we don't like any asymmetrical, we don't like asymmetry. Meaning whenever we encounter an asymmetry, like suppose we plant seeds in one side of the garden and seeds on the other side of the garden, and they only grow on one side. We can't help but ask, why here, not there, or why did the seeds sprout before but not now? We always need a reason for whenever we're confronted with an asymmetry. And this is actually the beginning of what is called the infinite regress problem in philosophy, is every reason that you have for something, there's another asymmetrical reason or domino before it. And this means that any attempt at an unmoved mover, as Aristotle would call it, or like a god domino that doesn't require another god domino. Yeah, so that's basically the problem with philosophy, is the infinite regress problem. It's also could be stated as Gödel's theorem in mathematics, but it's easier just to think of dominoes. So the method of evading undecidability is to decide without deciding between possibilities. That is, if you have two, say like eternal and non-eternal, two categories, it's not eternal versus non-eternal, it's eternally non-eternal intervals of existence and non-existence. So it's using the category of eternity and the category of non-eternity. Neither category is being excluded because we don't have any criteria to exclude these categories. If they were excluded, you see that then we would need a reason, and then we need another reason and another reason. So that's why no possibilities can be excluded. So the strategy is to decide without deciding between possibilities. This is how we evade undecidability. What else did I want to say about that? So the source's undecidability is included within everything. The Tao is to decide without deciding between possibilities. And that can be thought of as the explanation of everything, which includes undecidability, which uses the method of deciding without deciding between possibilities and applies it to the Tao itself, which is to decide without deciding between possibilities. And what it's doing is the Tao operating on itself, it actually activates itself because it's including decision and non-decision. Neither non-decision or decision can be excluded. And one is used before and one is used after. It goes decision and then non-decision, not vice versa. So it's saying, it's deciding this here and that there. And not vice versa. So there's, God, it's so difficult to explain this because you don't even know what I'm talking about, but the Tao is to decide without deciding between possibilities. And by possibilities, I mean pre-existentially disposed priorities. To try to give you like a layman's example of what I mean by that, if you've watched Rick and Morty, there's an episode where it has this little side story where it's talking about keeping Summer safe, and Rick's ship is trying to keep Summer safe, and it uses all these different methods of keeping her safe, and they start off as super aggressive and to less and less and less aggressive, and at the end, it ends up being a solution that has this other problem of flies on all the ice cream or no flies on any of the ice cream. And instead of, because it has to do with these telepathic spiders, but don't worry about that. It's not flies on all the ice cream or no flies on any of the ice cream. It's flies on some ice cream for the spiders and flies on not ice cream for the humans. But you can apply this kind of idea to every single situation in life. For example, if you were going to try to bridge the divide between individualists and collectivists, you see, you always have one side that's saying the collectivists are going to call the individualists greedy, and the individualists are going to call the collectivists lazy. And they're always, it's two ideals in opposition, but instead of doing that, you can have a form of collectivism that doesn't interfere with the individualistic market. You could go within the market. Say, you would use government to sell hemp plastic. It's not that other people couldn't sell the hemp plastic, but the idea is to get rid of the plastic water bottles. But you would buy the hemp plastic from the government, or the companies would, rather than other people in the free market, because it'd be used to fund basic income. That's what government really could be useful for, is to cut out a lot of the bureaucracy and have people in government voting on or arguing about like why my state deserves more basic income than another state is a better use of their time, rather than trying to control people's lives. So if you took the profit from the hemp plastic and you had a state individualized basic income for different costs of living, and it was voted on by the Senate and the Congress. You see how that could work without. You could eventually probably fund the whole government without taxes because of that. So it's a way of using government and giving them something to do that doesn't require force, and it's also trying to provide a buffer for the hyper-individualistic market that doesn't care about people, and trying to give it a buffer, but without minimum wage hikes or other ways of manipulating the market. But that's even if you want it, I mean, there's other ways that the world is already changing, like the tiny house movement, which is, it doesn't really matter who's president in that case, because it seems like that's the only environmentally stable and plausible future, is where most of us don't have giant houses. It's activism without activism. It's like it doesn't matter whether Bernie wins or Hillary wins or Trump wins, because it's going to happen anyway. We're already moving towards hyperloops and tiny houses, printed tiny houses, and dividing up lots. You don't really have to fight against what is right now. It's already just the baby boomers don't really understand it yet. Like, you see all these articles on Yahoo that are attacking millennials, and it's weird because they don't realize there's only like 2.5 generations that are in the workplace. So really what you're saying is the baby boomers own everything. And so when you complain about millennials moving back in with their parents, what you're really saying is that there's a housing shortage caused by the baby boomers, and the baby boomers are charging enormous rents because they can, and they don't understand, because everything's fragmented, and the baby boomers don't really seem to see context. It's kind of like thinking that the world is like when they were younger, when the standard of living was higher, at least for people starting out. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. It's probably a good place to stop, actually. Alright.